Welcome to this USA Affairs Explainer. Listen, we watch a lot of procedural television. We see the dramatic courtroom battles, the quick confessions, the neat and tidy resolutions before the credits roll. But today, we're stripping away those Hollywood myths. We're going to look at the stark, cold reality of the American justice system. We're going to examine exactly what happens, step by agonizing step, when a human being is pulled into the massive machinery of an arrest in the United States. This is an explainer, sure, but honestly, it is also a warning.
I want you to picture this scenario for a second. It's 11:47 p.m. on a quiet Tuesday night. You're driving home, your grip on the steering wheel is totally relaxed. You haven't done anything wrong. And then, the sudden, violent wash of red and blue police lights flashes against the wet pavement in your rearview mirror. Your heart immediately starts hammering against your ribs. Your hands go cold with this involuntary sense of dread. You pull over to the shoulder. In the next 60 seconds, your entire life could fundamentally change.
Because here is the reality. Every single year in the United States, over 10 million people are arrested. 10 million. That's enough to populate a massive city. We're talking about students walking home from the library, immigrants trying to build a new life, everyday citizens just going about their normal routines. Take a long second to let that number settle. Now, some of those individuals are undeniably guilty, but some are entirely, tragically innocent. And as our source material urgently points out, almost all of them, regardless of guilt or innocence, make the exact same catastrophic mistakes the absolute second those steel handcuffs come out.
So, let's dive into this. The very first thing we have to untangle is what an arrest actually is. It's really not just that dramatic, cinematic moment when someone gets pushed against the hood of a cruiser and the cuffs click around their wrists. Legally speaking, the reality is way quieter and it happens way faster. You are arrested the exact legal moment a police officer restricts your freedom to leave. That's it. If you're simply stopped on a neighborhood sidewalk and an officer says, "Hey, don't move," well, in the eyes of the law, your freedom has already vanished. You might already be under arrest without a single handcuff in sight.
The law essentially lays out three primary avenues where police can legally take your freedom. One, they personally witness a crime happening right in front of them. Two, they have a formal arrest warrant signed by a judge. Or three, they have what's called probable cause, which basically means they believe they have reasonable evidence that you committed a crime. Now, if you ever find yourself caught in any of these three nets, there is a dire survival rule you absolutely must understand. Your psychological instinct, it's going to be to pull away. It's going to be to argue, to try and explain yourself. Do not do that. Physically resisting, even if you know in your soul that the arrest is completely illegal, gives officers the immediate legal justification to escalate to physical force. It instantly slaps severe, separate charges onto your record. You fight an illegal arrest later in a courtroom, never, ever on the street.
To understand the invisible armor you actually possess in that courtroom, we need to step back in time to a cramped, tense interrogation room in 1963. A 23-year-old man named Ernesto Miranda was arrested and questioned relentlessly by police for 2 straight hours. Ultimately, he broke. He confessed to a terrible crime. But there was one massive structural flaw in the way they handled that interrogation. Literally nobody told him he had the legal right to just stay silent. The United States Supreme Court ultimately threw out his confession because of that. And in 1966, they established a profound legal rule that literally changed the fabric of American law forever.
You definitely know the words by heart from television, right? You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be appointed for you. It sounds like an absolute shield, but there is an incredibly dangerous, commonly misunderstood loophole here. Police officers actually do not have to read you these rights the exact moment the cuffs go on. Nope. They are only legally required to read them before they formally interrogate you. That means anything you nervously babble in the back of the police car, anything you say trying to be helpful and explain yourself before those formal words are spoken, is completely fair game. It will be used to build a case against you. Because of that devastating loophole, the absolute smartest thing any human being can do when stopped by law enforcement is to deploy these exact 7 words. Memorize them. I am invoking my right to remain silent. You state this clearly, firmly, and then you completely stop talking. No helpful explanations, no casual chat about the weather to ease the tension, no attempting to reason with the officer, just absolute total silence.
You have to remember, this encounter is not a conversation. It's a psychological battle. The USA Affairs source provides a really crucial survival guide for these high-stakes moments. Here's what you do. You stay calm, you politely identify yourself, you loudly invoke your rights, and you clearly decline any searches of your vehicle or property. But here's what you never do. Never run, never resist,
never answer questions without an attorney sitting right there in the room with you, and absolutely never lie to federal agents. Law enforcement officers are highly, highly trained interrogators. Their sole job in that moment is to gather evidence, and you are that evidence. Just think about the chilling reality of Martha Stewart. She didn't go to federal prison for insider trading. She went to prison simply because she lied to federal investigators.
Now, once you're placed in the back of that patrol car, any illusion of control you thought you had vanishes. You're taken to a station for booking, and it is a visceral, deeply dehumanizing, systematic process. First, they extract all your personal information. Then comes the blinding flash of the camera for your mugshot. Third, the cold ink of your fingerprints, which are instantly run through vast, interconnected national databases. Fourth, your property is stripped away. Your phone, your wallet, your shoelaces, everything goes into a sealed plastic bag. Fifth, you get a cursory clinical health screening. And finally, the heavy, metallic slam of the door as you are placed in a holding cell.
And then you sit there. You will sit in that concrete cell, completely cut off from your family, from your job, from your entire life, for anywhere from 24 to 72 agonizing hours. That is literally how long it typically takes the system to process you, just so you can stand in front of a judge for a bail hearing.
Which brings us to the bail system itself. This is the exact moment where your freedom suddenly gets a price tag attached to it. The source frames this heavily as a stark, brutal battle between freedom and finances. Bail is essentially just a financial deposit. You pay it to guarantee you'll show up for your trial later. But this creates an incredibly dark disparity in the system. A wealthy person accused of a violent crime can just write a check and go sleep in their own bed that night. Meanwhile, a poor person accused of a minor, nonviolent offense, they might sit in a concrete cell for months. The source points to the deeply tragic case of 16-year-old Khalif Browder. He spent 3 brutal years on Rikers Island awaiting trial for allegedly stealing a backpack, simply because his family couldn't scrape together the money for bail. Now, if you manage to navigate that bail hearing, you are then pulled into the overwhelming, agonizing machine of the court system itself. And let me tell you, it moves with a punishing slowness. You go from arraignment to plea bargaining to trial and finally a verdict. At the arraignment, your charges are formally read into the public record. And there's a universal strategy for defense attorneys at this stage. They will almost always advise you to plead not guilty, even if you fully intend to cooperate and make a deal later on. Why? Because pleading not guilty early on is the only way to preserve your legal leverage moving forward. But here is a truth that absolutely shatters the courtroom drama illusion we're all used to. Over 90%, more than 90% of criminal cases in America never actually see a jury trial. They never see that dramatic courtroom battle. They end quietly, right there in the plea bargaining phase, crushed by the massive risk of losing, the years of waiting in limbo, and the astronomical financial expense of a trial. Defendants just accept deals from prosecutors. They plead guilty to lesser charges, often just to make the nightmare end. And this agonizing wait brings to light one of the darkest open secrets of the whole system. It's the fundamental difference between jail and prison. A lot of people use the words interchangeably, but they are not the same thing. Jails are local, county-run facilities. They're meant for people who are awaiting trial or serving short sentences for minor offenses. Because of the constant turnover, they are notoriously crowded, underfunded, and chaotic. Prisons, on the other hand, are state or federal facilities for post-conviction sentences over a year, and they're generally much more structured. The grim irony here, legally innocent people, unconvicted of any crime whatsoever, often suffer the most chaotic, violent conditions in local jails while simply waiting for their day in court. And the sheer scale of this infrastructure is almost incomprehensible. The United States currently maintains the highest incarceration rate of any country on Earth. At any given time in this country, there are over 2 million human beings sitting behind bars. Now, I want to address something absolutely crucial for the millions of non-citizens living in the country. Students, workers, families. The source addresses a terrifying question you might be asking. Do I actually have rights? The answer is emphatically yes. The 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendments to the Constitution protect everyone on United States soil. Period. But this comes with an urgent protective warning. A criminal arrest can trigger separate, highly dangerous consequences with Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE. If you are a non-citizen, your very first call must be to an immigration attorney. And you must never, under any circumstances, blindly sign a voluntary departure document without legal counsel sitting right there beside you. To really ground all this legal theory in harsh reality, the source script examines several high-profile cases as grave cautionary tales. The O.J. Simpson case, for instance, demonstrated exactly how aggressively legal procedure and the mishandling of evidence by police can be challenged in court. Martha Stewart showed us the catastrophic, life-altering consequences of speaking to investigators without a lawyer. The Central Park Five served as a horrifying, tragic warning about what happens when vulnerable people are pressured into making uncounseled confessions. And the visceral footage of Rodney King and, decades later, the tragic death of George Floyd became global, searing reminders of the fatal stakes of police force and accountability during these arrests. The American legal system is a staggering, unforgiving machine. It just is. But you do have constitutional armor. Stay calm, stay silent, ask for a lawyer. These rights are guaranteed to every single person within the borders of the United States. It doesn't matter where you were born, it doesn't matter the color of your skin, and it doesn't matter how much money is in your bank account. But here's the catch. They only protect you if you actively, fiercely choose to use them.
We'll leave you with this final, really empowering thought from the documentary script. Knowledge is armor. An educated person cannot be easily broken by a system they actually understand. The system relies heavily on confusion, on intimidation, and quite frankly, on fear. But knowing your rights gives you undeniable agency. Which leaves us with a provocative question for you to consider tonight. If those red and blue lights flash behind your car right now, how well do you truly know your own rights? To keep arming yourself with knowledge, be sure to subscribe to USA Affairs and join us for our next deep dive into the hidden systems that shape our lives.